Now, before we dig deeper into the composition API, here is an optional lecture. And I really want to emphasize this. It's optional. You can skip this lecture for now, proceed with the rest, and come back to it later. I want to explore this reactivity concept a bit more to make sure we're all on the same page and there are no unanswered questions here. I hope I could make it clear how ref and reactive works, that they're very similar, but that I could also make it clear what the difference is. I logged both to the console, and I'll do it again here with the age here as an example so that we can again see the difference. So I'm logging UH, which is a ref, and user, which is a reactive object. And I need to import ref again for that. And if I do that, if I save this and I reload, here's our log. The first one here, that is our ref. You see it's an object with that value prop, and in that value prop the number is stored. And we have the getters and setters. The object, the reactive object, is a proxy wrapped around our object, and it has those extra handlers for dealing with data changes so that Vue is aware of them. Now, a common mistake or something which can be hard to understand is that these objects, the ref object and the reactive object, are reactive, but not the values stored in them, which is why we have to pass the entire user object here and not the name and age separated. Just to make this clear again, if I would pass username and age like this to the template, so if I drill into the user object here and I provide that on a name and age key, if we do this and then try outputting name and age here, that would work, as you can tell, but after 2 seconds it wouldn't update. It always stays at Maximilian31, and those changes made here aren't picked up. And the reason for that is that the entire object is reactive, but the values in those properties are not. And if we expose those values to the template, Vue thinks that only the values matter and not the entire object. Hence, it's just interested in changes to those values, and since those values are not reactive objects and not refs, it will never know about these changes. That's why we had to do it differently. Hence, I'm reversing this to go back to the old code, where I expose the entire user and access it in the template. But now back to this console log statement. Here we can basically see the problem if I console log uh.value and I also console log user.name and user.age. If I log these 3 things here, if I reload, you see 31, Maximilian, and 31 here in the console. And these are ordinary JavaScript values. These are not special objects, hence they have no watch mechanism attached to them. This is what would arrive in the template if we just return user.name or user.age in this object down there, what I did a second ago. And then it hopefully is clear that this will never change to Vue. It's just a string, just a number. It never changes. Yes, the object from which I extracted those values, that object changes, but I took a snapshot of those values before the change happened. That's basically what I'm doing here, and that's the problem. Now, Vue has helper methods here, which can help us with understanding what's reactive and not. It has a isReactive and a isRef function. And whenever something is reactive or is a ref, when you expose it to the template, updates will be picked up. Whenever that's not the case, updates will not be picked up. So here we can check if uh.value is a ref, and we can check if username, user.name I mean, is reactive. And if I do that, save this and reload, I get false twice. And that's just what I've been talking about over the last minutes or so. On the other hand, if I check the entire UH and the entire user object, instead of the nested properties, I get true twice. So whenever we expose the entire ref, or the entire reactive object to the template by returning it here, changes will be picked up and reflected in the template. It's as easy as that. Now I'll remove this here, but it can be helpful to be aware of these helper methods in case you want to find out whether something is reactive or not. Now there actually also would be a way of making the nested values inside of a reactive object reactive as well, or turn them into refs to be precise. There is a toRefs function which you can import from Vue. And toRefs is a very simple function. You give it an object and it will then automatically turn all property values into refs. So with that, we could get our user refs by calling toRefs and passing user, so our reactive object, to it. You can pass in any object, by the way. And with that, you get back an object which now has a name and age property, but now the values in there will be refs. So now I could expose username by accessing userrefs.name and age by accessing userrefs.age. And we could use username and age in the template now, like this, username and age. And if I save this, I get an error related to UH, which I'm not using anymore. So if I comment out UH here real quick, and ref is also unused now, and I get rid of the ref import, it now compiles. And now if I reload and wait for 2 seconds, the update is reflected. Because now, not just the object is reactive, but with toRefs, we also wrap the nested properties into refs, so that now we can also pass those properties, those property values directly to the template, because now they are refs. And as I mentioned, if you pass a reactive object or a ref to the template, then changes to that value will be picked up and reflected in the template. Otherwise, they won't. Now that was a lot of extra deep dive stuff. As I said, it's an optional lecture. You can come back to that later again in case it's not entirely clear. You won't need all of that all the time. I'm just a fan of teaching something thoroughly and diving deep into a topic to give you a chance of fully understanding what's happening behind the scenes and why we are doing something in a certain way. With that, however, I'm going to revert all that code here because it's not important for the next lectures and I don't want to confuse you with it. So let me get rid of all of that, get rid of the toRefs import, and go back to user.name and user.age here in the template. And now with that, let's leave this deep dive and instead see what we can do beyond data management.